So you have heard there is some dispute in Washington over the border wall that President Trump promised during the campaign, especially how to pay for it and whether some kind of border wall funding bill will be attached to an effort to try to pay for or lift the debt ceiling in this country. That is one of the controversies of the moment. Arizona Senator Jeff Flake has been taking some heat from the president. The president has called Flake weak on borders. Joining us now, Leslie Marshall, a Fox News contributor and syndicated radio talk show host. Boyd Matheson, former chief of staff to Senator Mike Lee and president of the Sutherland Institute. Boyd, you think the president wins this battle, in effect?
I think he does in the end, partially because I don't think he has to get this done in September. I think the base is going to give him a long leash, knowing that he's draining the swamp and trying to deal with Washington as usual. But I think the Republicans, I think Senator McConnell in particular, is underestimating what the president is going to do agenda-wise. They're used to typical politicians who look at their approval ratings as political capital. And so if they have high ratings, they do big things. If they don't, they do small things. But President Trump doesn't care about that. He's going to act his agenda regardless of what the polls say. And that's going to create some really interesting pressure right there in the United States Senate and to a lesser degree in the House.
Take a listen, Leslie, before I get to you. This is the president firing up the crowd on that border wall Tuesday in Arizona, and then Paul Ryan's response after. Listen.
We are building a wall on the southern border, which is absolutely necessary. Now, the obstructionist Democrats would like us not to do it, but believe me, if we have to close down our government, we're building that wall.
I don't think most people want to see a government shutdown, ourselves included. And Congress in the House has already done its work on this issue. There are very legitimate problems and concerns in the border that need to be addressed. The House already has passed funding for border security, including building physical barriers like a wall in the places that are necessary.
Leslie, he promised it during the campaign. There was probably no issue that was more prominent, and it got him elected. Why should he not push to build the wall?
Well, first of all, what he pushed, as you know, was that he would have a wall built along the entire border, southern border of the United States with Mexico, and that Mexico would pay for it. So he's already flip-flopping on that. Obviously, that was rhetoric and a promise that was never going to be fulfilled. Speaking of, it is never going to be fulfilled. You heard Speaker Ryan, and you've also heard, when you look at the interviews with those in the Border Patrol, that there are certain areas that need more policing and more security than others. I live in Southern California. We have the largest percentage of undocumented workers. It is also one of the largest points of entry, along with Texas and Arizona. And quite frankly, the walls and the fences that we have and have had have not been very successful. Additionally, the cost to do this, not just to build it, but to staff it, to maintain it, this is going to be, I believe, financially virtually impossible. And to hold the country hostage, I think, is going to hurt the Republican Party. And we may see some Republicans in jeopardy in the midterms as a result.
Boyd, you said his base is going to give him a long leash on this, but you've seen his popularity numbers. Is his base shrinking in your view?
I don't think it's really shrinking all that much. It's floating up and down just a little bit. But I think the point is right, that what's going to happen is it is going to force an important discussion about immigration. And that is a critical issue for the country. It's one that both Democrats and Republicans have raised billions of dollars off for their political campaigns, but they're not doing anything. I still believe we could solve a lot of immigration in an afternoon on the floor of the House and the Senate. But it's both political parties. It's both of the strident voices on both ends of the spectrum that are keeping us from having the conversation that will get done what the American people want. And whether it's all wall or fences or drones, there's a lot of that's already covered and ready. But we got to change the dialogue. We got to change the conversation, and that's going to be the critical thing come September.
We know, Leslie, already that attempted border crossings are way down under the Trump administration. You think the American people like that?
Well, the American people like that, but it's not just under the Trump administration. We're at our lowest level in a decade, and certainly President Trump has not been president for even a year at this point. So when we look at one of the reasons, it actually correlated with our economy. When you had less jobs, that carrot dangling, less people coming north from the south to fill those positions. And quite frankly, right now we're seeing a very difficult time in filling any of those open positions. But you're right, John, immigration, illegal immigration, the border crossing is at its lowest level in approximately a decade. So one of the reasons that people voted for the president, if they voted for him about this wall, was the concern about security. And we're not seeing the influx of those individuals. And quite frankly, whether it's Charlottesville or terrorism, that's not coming through a wall. And we have to remember, a wall is built to keep people out. It also can keep people in.
Leslie Marshall and Boyd Matheson, we have to say goodbye. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.